Heath's intestines were literally exploding out of his body, and he still won Mr. Olympia. But he isn't even the worst case on this list.
You know, I had this great physique in 97, talk about 97, not later on 99, where my midsection, my stomach's getting a little big.
From Jean-Pierre Fuss facing ridicule that came with bubble gut to Dave Palumbo's refusal to admit his bubble gut in public, these are the 12 most devastating bubble guts ever witnessed on a bodybuilding stage. Jean-Pierre Fuchs, 1999, Mr. Olympia. Our journey into the world of distended midsections begins with a Swiss powerhouse whose promising career crumbled under the weight of his own expanding abdomen. Jean-Pierre Fuchs stood as a monument to mass at the 1999 Mr. Olympia, carrying an astounding 285 pounds on his frame, but it was the veiny, asymmetrical protrusion exceeding 40 inches that would ultimately define his troubled legacy in the sport. What made Fuchs's case particularly heartbreaking was watching a man battle his own body while simultaneously losing his mind to the pressures of professional competition. In candid interviews years later, he revealed the psychological torment that accompanied his physical transformation, speaking with a rawness rarely heard from retired competitors.
At some point, food became my enemy. It really was the case. You know, I had this great physique in 97, but you see sometimes in certain poses, and I talk about 97, not later on 99, where my midsection, my stomach's getting a little big. And I should have started to back off there.
The causes were textbook Palumboism, insulin abuse monitored through a diabetic doctor with 24-hour doses post-workout combined with steroids and growth hormone. But for Fuchs, the mental strain proved equally devastating. Loss of motivation, personality changes from steroids, and hours upon hours of cardio attempting to compensate for uncontrollable binge eating that seemed to possess him during contest preparation. His 1999 Olympia showing remains his greatest regret, a memory that haunts him decades later. Placing 15th, appearing out of shape with a visibly distended stomach, Fuchs later recalled his girlfriend crying backstage while Nasser El Sonbati bluntly called him fat to his face. The pressure from his Viter contract and immigration concerns had pushed him onto that stage when his body was screaming for rest and recovery. A 2001 squat accident during a photo shoot, tearing his left quad while his right patella snapped catastrophically, ended his competitive career permanently. Today, he coaches others with the wisdom of experience, carrying the hard-earned knowledge of a man who learned that his wide back could never compensate for a midsection that had spiraled completely beyond his control. His story serves as the first warning of what awaits those who push too far. King Kamali, 2004 Mr. Olympia. If Jean-Pierre Fuchs's bubble gut was a tragedy written in suffering, King Kamali's was an irony wrapped in entertainment and served with a side of hypocrisy. The charismatic bodybuilder became famous for his crowd-pleasing robot posing routine, an elaborate mechanical performance complete with sound effects that unfortunately highlighted his severely distended abdomen, often described as resembling a 10-gallon drum, exceeding 40 inches in circumference. Standing 5 feet 10 inches and weighing approximately 255 pounds on stage, ballooning to an impressive 310 in the off-season, Kamali's physique underwent a disturbing and highly visible transformation over the years. In 2001, he displayed a tight V-taper with wide shoulders and excellent conditioning, placing 4th at the Arnold Classic and 10th at the Olympia. By 2004, that aesthetic foundation had completely eroded into what observers cruelly but accurately called a bullfrog appearance that dominated his midsection. The hypocrisy that surrounded Kamali's situation became legendary within bodybuilding circles and continues to be discussed today. He openly criticized rivals' distended midsections through media appearances and interviews while seemingly remaining oblivious to his own growing protrusion. This drew considerable and justified backlash from the community, who pointed out the obvious and unavoidable contradiction between his harsh words and his own reflection in the mirror. His rivalry with Craig Titus added theatrical drama to an already contentious era, providing entertainment value that distracted from deeper issues. But the bubble gut proved an opponent Kamali couldn't defeat through personality or posing, placing outside the top 10 at the 2004 Olympia despite an 8th place finish at that year's Arnold Classic. His career trajectory pointed definitively and irreversibly downward. A 5th place finish at the 2005 Ironman preceded his 2006 retirement from competitive bodybuilding, transitioning into coaching and content creation. Shawn Rhoden, 2017 Mr. Olympia. Sometimes the most disappointing bubble guts aren't the largest or most grotesque, they're simply the most unexpected, appearing on athletes who seemed immune to the condition. Shawn Rhoden had built his entire reputation on possessing one of the sport's most aesthetically pleasing V-tapers, a tight waistline that connected massive shoulders to sweeping quads with near-perfect proportions. That judges adored. This made his 2017 Mr. Olympia appearance all the more shocking and disappointing to his legion of fans. That night in Las Vegas, Rhoden's midsection displayed a disappointing bloat that completely ruined his signature look look, protruding noticeably in relaxed stances and during the crucial challenge rounds where competitors are compared directly. Observers described it as extremely prominent and the most disappointing distension on stage given his well-established past reputation for aesthetics. The clarity and definition that had defined his entire career simply weren't there when he needed them most. The likely culprits pointed toward peak week mismanagement, mistimed carbohydrate loading, or water manipulation leading to unwanted retention, potentially compounded by the HGH and insulin protocols common among elite competitors at that level. Whatever the precise cause, Rhoden appeared blurry overall and noticeably smaller than expected, dropping to a disappointing 5th place behind Phil Heath, Big Ramy, William Bannock, and the ageless Dexter Jackson. Fans who'd anticipated a potential title challenge based on his impressive 2016 runner-up finish were left scandalized by the sudden and unexpected decline. The placement sparked heated debates about judging leniency toward midsection issues and whether aesthetics still mattered in an era increasingly dominated by mass monsters who prioritize size over symmetry. But here's where Rhoden's story diverges from chronic sufferers and offers hope. His gut proved entirely temporary and fixable. By 2018, he returned with a flawless midsection, defeating Phil Heath in a major upset that signaled bodybuilding's potential shift back toward aesthetics. Dorian Yates, 1997 Mr. Olympia. Before bubble guts became epidemic throughout professional bodybuilding, before mass monsters dominated every Olympia stage with their grotesque proportions, there was Dorian Yates, the man who inadvertently started it all and changed the sport forever. His 1997 Mr. Olympia victory, securing his 6th Sandow trophy at approximately 265 pounds with a subtle waist expansion to around 38 inches, represented the first major warning sign that bodybuilding was heading somewhere dangerous and potentially irreversible. Unlike the grotesque protrusions that would follow in subsequent decades and make audiences gasp in horror, Yates's distension appeared almost reasonable by modern standards, barely noticeable to casual observers. His midsection was described as watery and bloated by keen-eyed analysts, attributed to insulin experimentation during 1996-1997 that he himself later admitted led to subpar conditioning and a shit look by his own standards. The expansion disrupted his taper, creating a blocky waist that contrasted sharply with his earlier, more proportionate and aesthetically pleasing physiques from 1992-1995. Critics within the bodybuilding community argued his victory represented mid-stage Palumboism in its early developmental form, compounded by serious injuries including torn triceps and biceps in his left arm that affected his symmetry. Some viewed the win as undeserved, suggesting he should have placed around 6th to uphold aesthetic standards that previous generations had established. Others defended it passionately, pointing to his absolutely unbeatable back development that destroyed competitors like Nasser El Sonbati from rear poses in ways never before seen. The implications of this victory cannot be overstated for understanding bodybuilding's evolution. Yates's win solidified bodybuilding's permanent shift toward size prioritization over classical aesthetics, directly influencing the mass monster era and successors like Ronnie Coleman who would push things even further. He proved that you could win the sport's highest honor with a compromised midsection, opening a Pandora's box that the sport still struggles desperately to close decades later. Post-retirement, Yates reversed his condition through drug cessation and comprehensive lifestyle changes, appearing far leaner in later years during seminars and appearances. Marcus Rule, 2004 Mr. Olympia. If Dorian Yates opened the door to the mass monster era, Marcus Rule tried to barrel through it with the unstoppable force of a German tank, and his midsection paid the devastating price for his ambition. At the 2004 Mr. Olympia, the man they appropriately called the German tank displayed a turtle shell basketball protrusion at approximately 280 pounds that became absolutely impossible to ignore despite his freakish and genuinely impressive upper body development. Rule possessed shoulders that literally blocked out the sun, a back that resembled a three-dimensional topographical map of mountain-like muscle, and arms that seemed carved from solid granite stone. Yet none of that overwhelming mass could compensate for an abdomen that protruded dramatically during the controversial challenge round, displaying poor vacuum control and obvious abdominal weakness that undermined his raw power and impressive density. The tragedy lies in what could have been if he'd prioritized conditioning consistently. At the 2002 Night of Champions, Rule had achieved Mr. Olympia caliber conditioning, proving definitively he could dial it in when absolutely necessary and when his preparation was properly executed. His shredded presentation that night showcased unmatched shoulders, back, and legs against quality competitors like Melvin Anthony and Gustavo Bedell, but consistency eluded him like a ghost throughout his career. At the 2004 Olympia, he placed 5th, with the gut and lack of overall flow costing him valuable podium spots that seemed within reach. Judges favored Ronnie Coleman's more balanced aesthetics, despite Coleman having his own documented midsection issues, simply because Coleman's superior back, legs, and triceps created an overall package that Rule couldn't match despite his size size advantage. The following year proved absolutely catastrophic for his career trajectory. Rule dropped dramatically to 15th place amid noticeably softer preparation and what appeared to be accumulated PED fatigue. Some observers argue that in today's more size-focused era, Rule would have easily won Mr. Olympia given evolved judging standards. But in his time, the bubble gut proved an insurmountable obstacle that derailed a promising career. Nick Walker, 2025 Mr. Olympia. Fast forward to the modern era of professional bodybuilding and we find Nick Walker, a competitor whose highly anticipated 2025 Mr. Olympia appearance sparked immediate controversy across social media and ultimately ended a coaching relationship in spectacular fashion. At 258 pounds of dense muscle, Walker displayed an asymmetrical, blocky midsection that fans immediately dubbed a pregnant horse gut, particularly devastating in side and back poses where obvious bloating destroyed his otherwise impressive density and muscle maturity. The aftermath proved explosive and played out publicly across social media platforms. Walker's coach, Kyle Wilkes, took full responsibility in a candid and emotional Instagram video, attributing the disaster to preparation errors rather than chronic Palumboism or structural issues. The specifics involved constant sodium intake throughout prep and a critical failure to adjust for the unusual night prejudging, leading to water, retention, flatness, and visible bloating rather than the optimal dryness and fullness required for elite-level competition where every detail matters. While Walker improved noticeably for finals, appearing much cleaner according to observers, the Friday prejudging damage proved irreversible, resulting in a 6th place finish despite tremendous pre-show hype from dominant victories at the Pittsburgh and New York pros. Reddit discussions emphasized concerning underlying factors beyond simple prep mistakes: possible diastasis recti, abdominal separation from years of heavy lifting, and genetic blockiness due to his short stature and naturally wide waist, which some users colorfully described as being built like a mini fridge. The gut was called one of the biggest on stage in the last 20 years by multiple analysts. Shortly after the competition concluded, Walker fired Wilkes amid lost trust and disappointment, ending their partnership permanently. Whether he can return to his impressive 2022 form, when he placed 3rd with superior flow and conditioning, remains an open question that continues to divide the bodybuilding community between believers and skeptics. Big Lenny, 2017 NPC Ruby Championship. We now enter territory that transcends typical bubble guts into something the internet labeled Lennyism, a hyperbolic variant of Palumboism so extreme and bizarre it defies conventional description and medical explanation. Leonard Big Lenny Person's appearance at the 2017 NPC Ruby Championship showcased a catastrophic gut spillage literally pouring over his posing trunks at over 320 pounds, creating a physique where the midsection became the unavoidable focal point while his extremities appeared to shrink in disturbing proportion. Unlike mainstream competitors who viewed distension as an embarrassing side effect to be hidden or minimized, Big Lenny leaned fully into his freakish appearance with characteristic bravado. As the charismatic leader of the Del Rey Misfits crew, his larger-than-life personality and completely unique physique built a devoted cult following that celebrated rather than condemned his unconventional and shocking look. Videos featuring him hunting tan 10 off that 10s and delivering bizarre monologues became internet legends, turning his bubble gut into a bizarre badge of honor. But the medical reality behind the entertainment and internet fame was absolutely terrifying to medical professionals. His condition stemmed from extreme HGH and insulin overuse combined with compulsive overeating, diabetes, and testosterone doses reportedly reaching an astounding 2,400 milligrams weekly. Early powerlifting combined with training alongside figures like Rich Piana amplified the risks considerably, creating a perfect storm of organ stress that his body couldn't sustain. At the Ruby Championship, he placed 2nd with aesthetics heavily docked due to the unprecedented and shocking distension. Yet his placement almost seemed secondary to his growing and obvious health crisis. Congestive heart failure with an ejection fraction of just 20% signaled that his body was failing rapidly, requiring heart ablations and constant medical intervention just to keep him alive. On October 10, 2024, Big Lenny passed away at 60 years old from heart failure directly attributed to decades of drug abuse. Dave Palumbo, 2000 NPC Nationals. The man whose name became permanently synonymous with the condition itself now takes his place on our countdown. Dave Palumbo's distended abdomen at the 2000 NPC Nationals, where he weighed 268 pounds and placed 8th with a midsection described as ballooning to pregnancy proportions, permanently altered bodybuilding's vocabulary forever. When people anywhere in the world say Palumboism, they're describing the condition through the lens of his very public suffering. Palumbo's transformation over his competitive career was dramatic, disturbing, and highly documented through photos and videos. He'd begun begun competing in 1990 as a relatively small 168-pound middleweight, eventually ballooning to a massive 300-pound super heavyweight through years of extreme protocols. Along the way, his waist expanded far beyond control, characterized by failed abdominal vacuums and visible distension that made classical proportion absolutely impossible to achieve regardless of how hard he trained. The causes aligned precisely with what we now understand as classic triggers for the condition: HGH-induced IGF-1 promoting visceral organ growth, insulin for aggressive mass building, and extreme caloric surpluses stretching the abdominal cavity beyond recovery. This devastating combination destroyed his competitive prospects despite an incredible 16 qualification attempts that never resulted in professional status despite years of dedicated effort. When asked directly about the condition bearing his name, Palumbo has addressed it indirectly in various interviews, attributing it to bloating and growth hormone while emphasizing that reversibility is possible with proper intervention.
You know, my physique changed, of course, a little bit, and when I retired, it kind of still looked really good. It wasn't what I would have liked it to be, but that's really the case for most bodybuilders, I think. So if you want to call the aging process, you know, acromegalia, or if you want to name it Palumboism, because, you know, let's face it, people don't name something after you unless you've made some sort of an impression on them.
He notably avoids the term Palumboism itself in conversation, perhaps understandably uncomfortable with his name becoming permanent medical shorthand for physical deterioration and bodybuilding's dark side. His post-competitive life demonstrates convincingly that recovery is possible with dedication. After retiring in 2004 following a 5-month prison sentence for HGH distribution, Palumbo reversed his condition significantly through drug cessation, yoga practice, and dedicated core reconditioning. Today, as CEO of RX Muscle and Species Nutrition, he coaches athletes using low-carb methods, applying hard-won wisdom from personal experience to help others avoid his painful fate. Big Ramy, 2017 Mr. Olympia. When Mamdou Big Ramy Elspieh stepped onto the 2017 Mr. Olympia stage at over 310 pounds of unprecedented mass, he represented both bodybuilding's ultimate aspiration and its greatest aesthetic compromise existing simultaneously. His pumpkin-shaped protrusion was evident in relaxed poses and during the crucial challenge round, creating a stark visual contradiction between unprecedented mass and obviously compromised midsection control that judges couldn't ignore. The sheer scale of Ramy's physique made his bubble gut almost mathematically inevitable given the requirements. To maintain an astounding 310 pounds of functional muscle, he required caloric intakes exceeding 10,000 calories with over 1,000 grams of carbohydrates daily, combined with HGH and insulin protocols that pushed his internal organs beyond natural biological limits. Some observers praised his relatively tight waist considering his unprecedented mass, but relatively tight still meant visible distension that sharp-eyed opponents and judges could exploit effectively. His third-place finish in 2017 sparked immediate and passionate robbery claims from fans who believed he'd outperformed Phil Heath in most mandatory poses, yet analysts pointed more soberly to softer overall conditioning, flat legs, and visible midsection cuts as legitimate weaknesses that justified the placement despite his overwhelming size advantage. The bubble gut became one significant factor among several that kept him from claiming the title that night. Unlike chronic sufferers whose guts derailed careers permanently and ended dreams, Ramy demonstrated the condition's potential reversibility with proper management. By 2020, dramatically improved preparation helped him claim his first Mr. Olympia title as the first Egyptian ever to win the prestigious Sandow Trophy, followed by a successful 2021 defense that cemented his legacy. Though the gut persisted to varying degrees throughout his career, better prep management proved that even the most massive competitors could find balance. KAI Green, 2014 Mr. Olympia. The most talented bodybuilder to never win the Olympia takes the 3rd spot on our countdown, and his story remains one of bodybuilding's greatest tragedies. Kai Green's 2014 appearance featured a bottle-shaped distension exceeding a 40-inch waist that became absolutely impossible to ignore during direct side-by-side comparisons with rival Phil Heath. His vacuum failures during their legendary and intense on-stage exchanges highlighted how chronic Palumboism had severely compromised his ability to control his midsection precisely when it mattered most. Green possessed weapons that should have overwhelmed any opponent on paper: superior lat width, bicep peaks, and leg development that rivaled or exceeded Heath in numerous mandatory poses and could dominate from certain angles. Yet every apparent advantage dissolved completely when the two stood together and Green's abdomen protruded outward while Heath maintained noticeably tighter control from key judging angles. The causes mirrored other cases on our list: HGH and insulin abuse combined with aggressive force feeding for mass gains, but Green's situation carried additional psychological weight and drama. At the 2014 Olympia press conference, a heated and physical altercation with Phil Heath added explosive controversy to an already tense rivalry. Green later reflected publicly on whether that confrontation ultimately cost him the Sandow, though detailed analyses emphasized Heath's superior completeness in traps, triceps, and overall polished presentation. The aftermath proved frustrating for fans who valued aesthetics and artistry above raw mass. Green achieved 3 consecutive runner-up finishes before withdrawing from Olympia competition entirely, leaving painful questions about what might have been under different circumstances. His case became Exhibit A in heated debates about whether bubble guts should automatically disqualify competitors or simply factor into overall scoring. Post-retirement, the condition persisted, despite his departure from competition, drawing harsh criticism in 2023 for a bizarre appearance in workout videos, with online calls for him to lay off the HGH. Yet Green has countered critics by showcasing impressive vacuum control on Instagram, demonstrating that even chronic sufferers can improve significantly with proper technique and dedication. Ronnie Coleman, 2005, Mr. Olympia. 8-time Mr. Olympia, Ronnie Coleman represented the absolute apex of bodybuilding mass during his era, and his 2005 appearance at approximately 300 pounds showcased a pregnancy-like spill during the challenge round that should have been disqualifying by any reasonable aesthetic standard in the sport. Yet he still won convincingly, tying Lee Haney's legendary record and cementing an era where sheer size trumped everything else, including symmetry. Coleman's gut wasn't accidental or surprising. It was the inevitable consequence of chronic overconsumption of calories and carbohydrates exceeding 1,000 grams daily, combined with aggressive HGH and insulin use that promoted visceral fat storage and tissue growth throughout his midsection. His protocols weren't secrets hidden from the community, they were simply taken to extremes that previous generations couldn't have imagined possible. The distension was clearly evident in poses like the back double biceps and during challenge rounds, contrasting noticeably with tighter competitors like Jay Cutler and Gustavo Bedell, who prioritized aesthetics. Critics argued it should have cost him titles and placements. Defenders pointed to his overwhelming mass, superior conditioning, and absolutely unmatched back development as justification for his continued dominance. Some discussions differentiate his visible abs gap as a genetic D-split rather than pure distension, attempting to explain away the obvious issues, but visual evidence confirms a rounded, bloated midsection that would have doomed lesser competitors instantly. Coleman simply had enough elite-level development elsewhere to compensate, barely, but convincingly enough for judges. The long-term costs proved absolutely devastating and serve as a warning to all. While not directly for the gut itself, Coleman underwent over a dozen surgeries for back, hip, and other issues tied directly to his extreme training and supplementation regimen over the years. Phil Heath, 2017 Mr. Olympia. We arrive at the most devastating bubble gut in competitive bodybuilding history, and surprisingly, it wasn't even Palumboism in the traditional sense. Phil Heath's asymmetrical beach ball-like protrusion at the 2017 Mr. Olympia was caused by 2 severe hernias that nearly killed him on stage, yet he still walked away with his 7th Sandow trophy in what remains the most controversial victory in recent memory. The medical reality behind his appearance was absolutely terrifying and potentially fatal. Heath competed with an upper abdominal hernia spreading approximately 2 inches wide on each side, trapping his upper intestines within torn tissue and muscle. Simultaneously, a lower umbilical hernia, stemming from a congenital condition poorly repaired during childhood surgery at age 2, had torn completely open to create a 3-inch wide, 1-inch deep hole, allowing approximately 4 inches of small intestine to protrude visibly forward. Doctors later revealed the horrifying truth: he was just 1 day away from potentially fatal intestinal strangulation, where blood supply to the intestines could have been completely cut off, causing rapid tissue death. Heath pushed through regardless of the danger, achieving what he described as his hardest and most conditioned physique despite the actively life-threatening condition. On stage that night, the protrusion was particularly noticeable between poses, where Heath struggled visibly to control his midsection, leading to heavy breathing through his stomach and an uncontrolled appearance that critics argued should have cost him the title. The robbery claims were immediate, persistent, and continue today. Many believed competitors like Shawn, Rhoden, or Big Ramy presented tighter packages deserving of victory. Surgery came less than a week after the Olympia, performed by Dr. David M. Grishkin at the Hernia Center of Ohio, a specialist with over 20,000 hernia repairs, who described Heath's case as one of the worst he'd ever encountered in his career. The procedure involved pushing approximately 5 inches of intestines back into the abdomen, tightening the abdominal wall, and closing the dangerous holes. Recovery proved grueling and humbling for the champion. 5 days post-surgery, Heath couldn't lift his own luggage. 3 weeks later, he was at only 40 to 50% strength. He delayed guest posing events until reaching approximately 50% recovery, eventually performing his first post-surgery appearance at the Darcy Beckles Classic in Barbados. Barbados. The following year, Heath's compromised midsection contributed directly to his dethroning by Shawn Rhoden, the visual asymmetry finally catching up to him after years of dominance. He underwent additional surgeries in 2018 for recurring issues, and by 2023, after multiple procedures, adopted training methods similar to those used by Hollywood actors to maintain his physique without extreme strain. Phil Heath's 2017 bubble gut represents the ultimate intersection of bodybuilding ambition and physical destruction, a 7-time champion competing with his intestines literally exploding from his body, winning anyway through sheer will and nearly dying for it. No other case better exemplifies why the sport must reckon seriously with the costs of pushing human biology beyond its breaking point.